Attorney General Jeff Sessions is making sure asylum seekers are actually escaping persecution, not just gaming our system. Sessions announced a new DOJ policy that requires immigrants seeking asylum to prove that they are not just fleeing crime or gang violence. So let's debate this crucial change to our immigration policy with Alan Orr, an immigration attorney, and former immigration judge Art Arthur of the Center for Immigration Studies. All right, let's go to Alan first. Alan, I know there are a lot of people who are waving their arms like, oh my gosh, this is the persecuted people are not going to get any relief now. They're going to be shut out of our system. But I think what he's referencing is an 872% increase in applications for asylum since 2009 in the United States. That is a massive increase with not I think a correlating fact pattern that would indicate that we have that many more thousands of people who have legitimate claims.
Right, but I don't think that really the numbers should affect due process and justice, right? So that's not how we handle due process and justice, by numbers. It's a process. And so what Sessions has done goes with the narrative you just said before about making wrong decisions, because he's basically undid 20 years of precedent law of other judges within the immigration system. And I'm happy to be here with Art today because he's one of the outliers who basically says this is a good decision, whereas there's 16 others that say this is the wrong decision for the reasons you've enumerated, and that each case is a case-by-case judgment. And so what it doesn't do is sort of clear the backlog. What it does is send a message to the current officers at the port of entry to say, please start denying these claims for persecution. But what it doesn't immediately do is give us a remedy to the numbers that you discussed.
Now, Art.
In 2005, Congress made it clear that in order to be granted asylum, the persecution that you allege has to be at least one central reason for the harm that you fear. And that's a huge change. And quite frankly, it's taken 13 years for the Department of Justice to actually apply that to these crime-based
Okay, let's
claims.
go through that again. It has to be one central reason.
At least one central reason for the harm that you fear has to be one of the 5 characteristics for asylum: race, religion, nationality, membership in a particular social group, or political opinion. In this particular instance, it's membership in a particular social group. And that particular social group in the Attorney General's decision was people who were fearing crime in their home countries.
Because that's not what you traditionally think of. I mean, and you're the expert here, I'm not, but when you think of persecution, having a horrible husband who's beating you up or a wife who's beating you up, that doesn't seem like that seems like regular old garden variety crime.
Persecution is generally harm that's inflicted on you by the government.
For your identity, or your belief system.
Or your belief system. But unfortunately, the membership in a particular social group is completely amorphous. And there have been many years of law, and that law was actually applied properly by Jeff Sessions to individuals who had feared crime in their home countries. Quite frankly, they don't have an asylum fear, they have a crime fear. And their home country needs to address that.
Alan, another thing that I hadn't heard of, Alan, just one question. The other thing I hadn't heard of before is the defensive use of asylum claims. I talked about this morning on the radio, that when people are about to be deported, oftentimes they then say, oh, wait a second, I have an asylum claim. And so it's now defensively used against the government in those situations, which is also, numbers don't matter, but it's kind of some kind of empirical proof that someone's getting information from some very smart lawyer to make this kind of claim when you're already a deportable alien under U.S. immigration law.
Well, really, that's part of the problem. A lot of the people are robbed without having a lawyer. So therefore, they might have heard things from people, across the way, but many of them are robbed without a lawyer and sort of handling these cases on their own and really talking about their experience. And if you're a battered female or battered woman or battered mother with your kids and you're having this intense legal conversation with the CBP officer to discuss what your level of fear is, you can see the problem that they're mostly going to discuss about how many times they were beaten, how many times they were struck, how many times they've been harmed. And so it isn't, and that's why it's a case-by-case analysis. And what Sessions has basically done is he's removed the whole sort of case-by-case analysis and said, look, I don't think anyone who's coming here, if it's a private actor, then this isn't persecution. And that's not what the case law says today, because really what we say is it's the inaction, right? It's the governments who are not stepping in to protect their citizens. It's the governments who are allowing this to happen, this sort of thing that also participate in the system.
Yeah, that's a lot of people around the world. I mean, I was stunned.
Well, actually, if we're talking about the number of cases we have,
yeah, I'm just saying,
it's about 2% of the total population, 0.2% of the total population.
And I disagree with when he's talking about this. the Attorney General is not completely closing the door to these claims, but what he's saying is that these claims need to be assessed the way that every other particular social group.
How do you ever assess it when someone comes from Guatemala and says my brother beat me up or my husband? How do you go to like the local sheriff in Guatemala? I mean, I've been to Guatemala many times. You can't get the records all that easily there.
Well, you can rely upon the statements of the alien in order to establish the claim.
All right, gentlemen, thank you so much.
And the information we know about the countries.
We'll have you back. Love both of you.